What is up, guys? So this is going to be my review for Venom, which is a little late because Venom came out last weekend, but I didn't see the movie till now, so I obviously couldn't review it till now. But Venom is, I'd say even before I watched it, I knew I wouldn't like it as much as I could, just because the concept of the movie is very flawed. The fact that they made a Venom movie, or the fact that they introduced Venom in a Venom movie, makes no sense to me. You can't introduce Venom in a Venom movie without Spider-Man, because the whole story with Venom is very tied to Spider-Man. That's a very compelling story, which is a part of what made him such a great villain in the comics. Also, part of that is that he looked really cool, and I think that's why he became so popular. But the story with him and Spider-Man is very compelling. They tried to do that in Spider-Man 3. Nobody liked it just because Eddie Brock came off as kind of whiny and kind of a not very compelling character, and they really split this time between other villains. But I think they could have done a very well done Venom movie, just not introducing Venom in that movie, because for him to start off in a movie without Spider-Man, it just doesn't make any sense. And for him to become a villain after this movie makes no sense as well. I can't see Tom Hardy's Venom right now facing off against Spider-Man as a villain, because at this point he's already an anti-hero. He's not a villain, or he might be even a superhero at this point who just occasionally kills people. It's just he killed like 3 people in this movie. So I really can't see this version of Venom facing off against Spider-Man in the future, which is a big part of what makes this movie so flawed. I think they should have waited to introduce Venom in a Spider-Man movie and then spin off from that, make him a spin-off with him as an anti-hero. Well, that would have been really great and really fine, and Carnage could have been the main villain and everything. But in this movie, Venom appearing in this movie and debuting in this movie in a Venom movie without Spider-Man is stupid. It makes no sense, and it just shouldn't have been done. Which, just off the bat of that, this movie just isn't as enjoyable for me because Spider-Man is not there, and Venom he just doesn't make sense as much as a character, and they can't really do much with him in the future in terms of Spider-Man. That being said, I actually didn't hate this movie at all. I don't think it deserves the crazy bad ratings and reviews it's getting on Rotten Tomatoes. It has like a 30% right now. I don't think it deserves that bad of reviews. I also think those reviews are kind of justified. It's not an amazing movie or anything. It's not. I would hesitate to call it even a good movie. I would say it's okay. I wouldn't call it bad or anything. It's just okay. And an okay movie with a terrible concept like this means for not a very good movie. But I would say there are a couple of things that I liked. Eddie Brock, for instance, is a fairly compelling main character, and Tom Hardy is pretty good in the role. He's not great or anything. I don't think I've ever seen Tom Hardy in a movie where he was great in the role. I don't really get why people are saying he's such a good actor. He's not a bad actor from what I've seen, but he's never been great in a movie from what I've seen, and this movie is no exception. He's good in the role. He's not great, but I don't think he needs to be great. But really, the relationship between Eddie and Venom, I'm sure you've heard this in a bunch of reviews, but that is by far the most entertaining part of this movie, is that relationship. I don't think that's how it worked in the comics, where Eddie and Venom were 2 separate people where they talked to each other like that. I don't think it was, and I think that by the end of the movie they really came together like they are in the comics, which I wanted them to do that. But even before they did that, like, it was a very entertaining thing to watch. Venom also looks really cool. Like, he doesn't look better than he did in Spider-Man 3. I don't think he is definitely bigger, and maybe not more comic accurate because there's no spider. I don't think he looks that much better. He just looks very different. They took it in a very different take. Like in Spider-Man 3, he was more practical. Here he's more CGI. I don't think it looks better, but I also think it looks different enough to be its own thing, and it just looks really cool. One thing people have been kind of praising this movie for, but maybe not praising, maybe it's like a reverse praising, which is that the movie is kind of funny and sort of unintentionally funny, which is a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a good thing because they weren't trying to be funny and they came out as funny, which is kind of a negative. It's like Batman and Robin way back in 1997, which was not trying to be funny at all, but was funny because of how bad it was. And then there's like kind of praising of Venom, saying that it was an entertaining, funny movie, and I would lean more towards the latter, saying it was a entertaining and sometimes even funny movie. That is probably the most praise I would give to the movie. It's not a very good movie, like I said in this video, but I think it was fairly entertaining for what it was trying to do. I don't think it was unintentionally funny, and I don't think it was very funny for the most part, but I would say it was fairly entertaining. And I said in this video that the most entertainment I got from this movie was definitely the banter between Venom and Eddie. That was very, very entertaining, and people are saying it's funny. I don't think those scenes were very funny, but I do think they were entertaining for other reasons that I can't really list off the top of my head. But really, that's what I think about the unintentional funniness that this movie has been, people have been talking about in this movie. One thing that I found kind of weird about this movie is the pacing, and I think a big problem with this movie is that it is very short. It's only an hour and a half long if you get rid of the logos in the beginning and the end credit scene at the end and all the credits at the end. It's only an hour and a half long for the whole movie, which is a little short for a live-action superhero movie like this. It doesn't give a lot of time for the characters to develop, and the pacing is a little off. Like, the time between when things happen is really weird. Like, it doesn't feel like time passed, but it looks like time passed. It's a little weird. I'd say the pacing is weird. The characters don't get very developed, especially the villain. The villain doesn't really change much throughout the movie. His motivations seem a little weird by the end of the movie. Also, he's just another villain who has the same look and or powers as the hero, which most first villains of a movie do. But I don't think it's a thing people want to see anymore. I definitely don't want to see it. I would rather see Venom face off against somebody who has varied powers and something else other than the exact same powers he had. It worked in the narrative, but I don't think it was that fun to watch at that point. And the villain, again, wasn't very developed. No character in this movie was developed that much except for Venom. And that doesn't mean Eddie Brock. I mean just Venom. Venom was developed or was attempted to be developed, but he had this switch where he went from like wanting to destroy the human race to wanting to save it, and it just felt so awkward. It just felt so fast. Again, the movie is very short, and I think the reason for that is because they cut a lot of corners to make it PG-13, which was a huge mistake for the movie. This is another thing that you've probably heard in a bunch of other reviews, but this movie could have 100% benefited from an R rating. There are not a lot of comic book characters that I think should benefit from an R rating and should get an R rating over making more money like PG-13 movies usually do over R-rated movies, but there are certain characters that just work better as R ratings. On Marvel side, there's obviously Deadpool and Wolverine. In DC side, there's like Deathstroke and Lobo, and I think Venom is one of the characters that after he fights Spider-Man in a PG-13 movie, he can spin off into his own anti-hero R-rated adventure, and I think this movie could have benefited from both those things, one being a spin-off of a Spider-Man movie, which it isn't, and two, having an R rating, which it would have been so much better, which it would have been just more fun to watch, where he killed like 3 or 4 people in this movie, where in an R-rated movie he could have killed like so many people, which you can see in Logan and Deadpool is very enjoyable to watch. And again, it doesn't work for every superhero, like they're doing this with Titans, which that looks way too dark and way too brutal because those characters don't really fit an R rating, but they're getting one which just doesn't fit the characters, whereas in Venom would have 100% benefited from an R rating. Would it have saved the movie from being not very good? Probably not. The concept is still very flawed, and the characters don't get very developed, except for Venom. The pacing is a little weird. The villain, not very interesting, so probably not. But I think it would have made the movie a hell of a lot more enjoyable. On top of all the bad things I said about it, I said a couple good things, but on top of all of this, the movie doesn't really matter. It's not going to connect to anything in the future, I don't think, because, I mean, the opening weekend was pretty great for Venom, but so was Batman vs. Superman. Batman vs. Superman had the biggest superhero opening weekend of all time, and then the following weeks, it didn't make that much money, and it was quite a disappointment, and I think it was because of the word of mouth and all the bad ratings and reviews. I think Venom will probably be the very same thing. I don't think many people will want to watch the movie after last weekend, so I don't think it matters because it won't spin off into anything. It also won't connect to the MCU because of a couple of reasons. One, the MCU has a perfect record from, as far as I know, on Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't think they want to sour that with a 30% rating like Venom. Also, he wouldn't make a very compelling villain for the MCU's Spider-Man, considering he's like 25 years older, so the connection wouldn't be really there, and the fact that he's an anti-hero already, not a villain at all. I don't think he would make a very compelling villain for that, so I don't think this Venom movie will connect to the MCU, and I don't think it'll spin off into its own universe either, so it doesn't really matter. But in conclusion, I think Venom is a very flawed movie with a flawed concept. The villain is pretty boring and underdeveloped. The pacing is pretty bad. It could have 100% used an R rating, and the movie doesn't really matter. That being said, the relationship between Eddie and Venom is very entertaining to watch. Venom looks really, really cool, and Eddie Brock's a fairly compelling main character, so I'll give Venom a 5.7 out of 10. So that is my review and rating of Venom. Let me know your opinion in the comments down below. If you've seen the movie, what do you think about it? If you haven't seen this movie, does this review make you want to see it? Because I would probably bet it doesn't. But let me know your opinions in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.